On today's Chasing the Game, we have St. Francis head coach Josh Lindke. We talk about his journey from quarterback at Anthony Wayne to leading the Knights program back to relevance. Chasing the Game starts right now. Welcome into Chasing the Game. Josh Lindke is here. Josh, thank you so much for coming back and doing this. It wasn't too long ago we had you on the coaches panel back at the beginning of the month, and now you're here again. Just how's life? How are things, man?
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, and it was a good week one for us going over to Waite and getting a win, and looking forward to heading over to Bishop Dwenger week two. So it's been good. We're in the full swing of things, so just excited to keep this 2025 journey going.
Absolutely. You guys had a terrific, 2024, and we'll get into that. You guys have seemed to pick up right where you left off. It was like a 63-19 win. I mean, that's got to be a pretty satisfying result, right, as a coach for week one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're always worried about certain things, going the right way or the wrong way. And so it was nice to see our guys come out, and we kind of struggled in two scrimmages too, just trying to find a starting quarterback and just matching some new pieces and things of that nature. We feel like we've got a pretty good defense, so we knew that would be a strong suit. But, it was good to kind of see our offense come along and be explosive Friday night. So that was exciting for us to see, and we're starting some young guys on that side of the ball. So for those guys to get some good experience Friday, and really everybody in our roster played Friday night, so that was exciting too for our guys.
Yeah, you guys seem to have this talent all over the board. I mean, at least to me, the way it looks like, I mean, the running back room, you guys have Eli Beal and Rocco Pillarelli. Just how awesome is it as a head coach you get to have two guys like that in your backfield?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting to be able to game plan with both those guys. I mean, and both those guys can split out and play a little bit of receiver as well. So they're both super dynamic. I mean, obviously it's well noted what Rocco has done, in his high school career. And then, obviously what Eli did for us last year as a first-team All-Ohio running back. So for us to be able to have both those guys, it's fun, throwing up plays every week and figuring out how to utilize them in our offense. And so, I think obviously that's our coaching staff's job, is to figure out how to best utilize them. And I think we're still working some things out with both them, but they've done a good job. I mean, Rocco's meshed really well since he's come over, and I think Eli appreciates some of the break in the workload as well. So and we're able to utilize him outside, and it's been a nice change of pace to be able to have two guys that are explosive as they are.
You touched on it. I was going to ask, how do you guys divvy up the carries, right? I mean, how do you kind of balance those two talents and get guys involved, keep them engaged, but also not, go to one guy too much more than the other, because you have two really talented backs?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just Eli and Rocco. I mean, Jaden Houston, who's a senior receiver, is super explosive. Keyshawn Richardson, who's another freshman who you guys will get to know very well over the next 4 years, is very explosive as well. And Salvier Hughes is another kid who's a freshman that we're playing that's very explosive. So just trying to find touches for everybody is always difficult. I think that, during these early portions of the year, it's going to be fun for us to figure out who's going to be kind of the workhorse for us. But when you look at Eli and Rocco, to be able to kind of have that 1-2 punch is nice, and you don't have to just have one kid carry the entire workload. When we go into a game, we have a touch chart. One of our assistants keeps track of that for myself when we're calling plays. And so just trying to make sure that we're spreading the wealth, because I think at the end of the day, when you've got explosive kids, it's not so much about your scheme. It's more so about getting those kids the ball. So that's what we really try to focus on.
Yeah, on the defense, you guys have Jermaine Polka. He's kind of the headline guy at that defense. You have like 8 starters back, right, on defense?
Yep.
So it's a super talented defense, but you've got this basically Big Ten level defensive lineman. What's it like having him on your defense?
Yeah, I mean, Jermaine is he's a force, right? So, I think I was asked a couple days ago what is his best trait as a defensive lineman, and it's really just the way he's able to anchor himself down in 2-gap plays and things of that nature. I mean, he's really tough to block. He's really tough to handle. But it's not just him. I mean, it's Deion Banks. It's also part of that defensive line. Tyrell Lawrence is part of that defensive line. We got another freshman, Ricardo Doyle, who's coming on really strong and is going to be a very, very good player. So Jermaine is kind of he spearheads the entire operation. And I think when opposing teams turn on film of us, they understand that he's going to command a lot of attention. But it's the entire defensive line, and then we've got 2 really good inside linebackers that do a great job, in Demetrius Loggins and Bo Thomas, and then Tyler Galat, who's a returning starter as a freshman from last year. He's a sophomore this year. And then Ryan Hill, who is filling in the other outside backer role. That front 7 is very stout. And so it's good for us as we're breaking in some new pieces offensively at the beginning of the year to hopefully lean on those guys.
Yeah, you guys won 8 games last year. I think that was the first time since like 2013. I mean, St. Francis was in like some basically dark age for a while there. I mean, a decade plus. and you guys come in and you win 8 games, you make the playoffs for the first time in a long time, you win a playoff game for the first time since I think it was like 2009. Just how satisfying was that to not only do it, but to do it in your first year taking over the program?
Yeah, I think, we talked a lot about it. It was kind of crazy how fast the season went by. And then, before you know it, we look up and we were 3-1, then we were 4-1, and then we were 5-1. And then we were playing for a league title in the AA division at the end of the year and got beat pretty good by Lumen Christi. And hopefully we're going to learn from that going forward this year. But, I think when we envisioned this job, St. Francis has always had talent, and you've always had the opportunity to bring some talent in that, wants to play at a high level. And I think our biggest thing was just showing, the city of Toledo and area kids that we can develop talent here. There are other options for them. And obviously getting a kid like Eli to come over last year was huge for our success. But also having kids like Jermaine and Raheem Brown that stayed, and stayed the course and didn't jump ship, and believed in the institution that St. Francis is. And I think, for us, we've always tried to sell, it's not just about football here, it's about the institution of St. Francis. And I think there's a lot of kids and a lot of people within the city of Toledo that are buying into that. Obviously, us doing what we did last year played a huge role in that, because if you go 2-8, people aren't very excited about it, right? So really for us, it was just a week-by-week thing. And before we knew it, we were in the position that we were in. And, but I think when we took this job and then, some of the assistants that I hired and people within the building always kind of looked at this as that this is what this place could be and what it could turn out to be. So, I always believed in it. I always laugh and joke with people like, as much as, maybe St. Francis needed me, I needed St. Francis too in that aspect. And I think it just took a guy that believed in what was going on. And I don't think that was happening for a number of years. And I've poured everything I've had into it since we took this job a couple years back. And, I really truly believe this is a place that you can be for a long period of time and win a number of games and win at the highest level in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, you guys, again, 8 games. Did you expect it in year 1? Was that kind of, down the line you thought, okay, we'll get to 8 wins by like year 2 or 3, or were you ahead of schedule, I guess?
Yeah, I think we're definitely ahead of schedule. I think when we took this job, we knew it was going to be a project, and, to have the year that we had last year in 2024 certainly, kickstarted it pretty quickly, but no, I'd be lying if I told you that I thought that would happen right off the rip. So it was certainly pretty exciting. I think our kids just kind of continued to gain belief and gain confidence as the year went on. And, to put an 8-4 product out in the field, to win a playoff game at Avon Lake, who's notoriously pretty good, Northeast Ohio, to battle Central Catholic the way that we did, to beat St. John's for the first time in 10 years, and then essentially play for a league title in the AA division. There was a number of people within our building, I think, that could believe that was going to happen. But I think there was a number of people too that were shocked about what we were doing, but our kids just went to work every day, and that was the fun part about it.
Yeah, when you were interviewing for the job, was that sort of the pitch? Was just everything you were saying about, you need a guy who believes in that? What was kind of the pitch to the St. Francis people, like, hey, I want to be your head coach, this is why? Yeah,
I think so, working there in 2017 and 18 with Dan Chipka as the offense coordinator and having some familiarity with the school, John Hall, who's the principal, who's a really good buddy of mine, Jamie Kazmarek, the basketball coach and the AD, kind of seeing their vision of what they wanted to believe, this program could be, and then getting behind Father Rose and having spent time with him before when I was an assistant as well. So I think the familiarity of the job and the school was a no-brainer for me at that point. I think I had been offered the job a few times prior and turned it down for a number of different reasons. It's just the timing wasn't right. So I think everything kind of fallen into place the way that it did, really worked out for us. And I think the biggest thing that I tried to sell to people was that we've got to go out and we got to work, and we've got to put in the work every single day to get to the point we want to get to, but the bones of what we thought this could be was there. And so I think for us, it was just selling the administration on, if you're able to back us in what we're trying to do and give us the resources of what we're trying to do, this can be a destination program for a number of different kids in the city of Toledo.
Yeah. Did Central Catholic come up in the conversations? Did it talk about like, hey, we got to beat Central Catholic? Because I know, I'm sure for alumni, that's a huge part of it is when are we going to beat Central Catholic again? The Irish Knights, one of the few trophy rivalries in Northwest Ohio football. You guys haven't beaten them in however long. That dates back to the early 2000s. What's the conversation like when it comes to Central Catholic? Yeah,
I think, I think the dynamics of both schools have kind of changed a little bit since back in the day when Coach Cromwell was coaching and winning the Irish Knight year after year after year. There was a time when the Irish Knight was on Bancroft for a number of years, very similar to how, Central Catholic has it now. So, anytime you talk to alumni and that bleed the red and blue, they talk about the Irish Knight and wanting to get the Irish Knight back. But I think for us, not trying to sell, a pipe shoot about what we were going to do right away. I think it was more so we want to get the Irish night back. It's a day in and day out thing. I mean, working for Coach Dempsey for a number of years and just seeing how that program operates, I knew we still have a long way to go, and we had a long way to go, and we took this job to eventually get that thing back. It doesn't just happen because you wish it's going to happen. So, we talk about it pretty consistently with a number of different alumni and within our program and things of that nature. But you also have to understand, and the kids got to understand, there's a requisite level of work that needs to be put in to even get to that point of having that opportunity. So I think we kind of instilled that into them last year. And I think, with the way, the game didn't, end the way we wanted it to end with a 28-7 victory. And I think Central, showed their colors and what Coach Dempsey and their program's all about, with how they kind of took a stranglehold on us at the end of the game. And so that was a teaching tool for our kids, and understanding we were there, we were close for a number of different, parts of the game, but the finishing is where we've got to continue to get better at in this program. And I think, trying to sell that to our kids all offseason has been a big teaching point for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 28-7, some people might look at that and be like, okay, that's not that close, 3-score game. But you guys really, for a long time in that game, were right there with them. You guys were showing that you really were closer to them than a lot of people thought you guys were. I would like to think that you guys have improved, year 2 to year 1. So can we expect kind of a more interesting matchup in year 2? I don't want to make you make any guarantees here, but I mean, it really seems like one of the more interesting matchups in Northwest Ohio now.
Yeah, we sure hope so. I mean, anytime you step on the field and get the opportunity to play against that team and get the opportunity to coach against Coach Dempsey and his staff, I mean, we certainly want to make it as interesting as possible. So, we'll get to that point when we get there in week 9. I'm going to do the typical coach speak, and we're going to worry about Bishop Dwenger right now. But yeah, our kids are fired up for that, and when we get to that point, I know our St. Francis community is going to be very fired up for that as well. Yeah,
you guys, you've been saying it earlier. I mean, you guys play in a terrific conference. Great division, very competitive. What's that like going, week in, week out? You guys had to play, Lumen Christi. You guys had to go all the way to Jackson, Michigan to play them. I made that 2.5-hour drive, and to go there and not get the result you wanted is tough. How do you do that week in and week out playing against these really good Detroit teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you not only the Detroit Catholic League, but you look at our schedule. I mean, we've got to go to Bishop Dwenger this week. We play Sandusky Perkins, who's in the D4 state title next week. We play Clyde, who's traditionally been very good. And then we've played a team on Airport, in a couple weeks, and they're going to be, re-energized with Coach Horn there and whatever else. So, and then we lead into Detroit Catholic League play. So, the travel is not great, but to me, I've always told people it's not that big of a deal when you're going up there on a Friday night. It's a unique opportunity. And we're in this AA division, and people might get the sense that the AA division is not as good as the Central Division, but Jackson Lumen Christi is very, very talented. Coach Brogan and those guys have won a number of state titles. U of D has Division I talent all over the field, and Divine Child returns a young team from last year with a number of great players as well. So we've got our work cut out for us, and we're excited to compete in this AA league, and we're excited to continue to play some really storied programs, and have the opportunity to have a couple down here come down here and play us, and then make our way up to U of D to play them in week 6.
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier you were an assistant with Central Catholic, you were an assistant with St. Francis. How much of the Greg Dempsey coaching philosophy, how much of what he does is kind of in your coaching philosophy, your DNA?
Yeah, I think, I've worked for a number of different head coaches. I mean, Greg was obviously instrumental in my development, and, just learning and understanding how to develop a team at a championship level, and then working for Coach Smith, who I played for at Anthony Wayne. I think the biggest thing that he taught me was just player relationships, and so that's something I try to carry over. Try to take something from, every coach that I work for. I mean, working for Dino Babers and Mike Jinks at BGSU, learning the game of football was huge for me in that aspect. I tell people all the time, it's kind of like that was like my master's in football, just learning philosophies and offensive football and things of that nature, spread football. And then getting the opportunity to go and work for Greg and learn how to build a program at a championship level and then sustain it. Not only just get to the mountaintop, but then when you're there, how do you continue to move forward and continue to make your program better day in and day out? And then working for Dan Chipka as well when I worked here for the first time. I mean, I think just his organizational structure and how he kind of attacked each day with great energy was also something that I took from him. So getting the opportunity to work for a number of different head coaches at a young level and start this profession when I was 19 years old has been huge for me. But you got to remember too, as a head coach, you got to put your own spin on things as well. You can't try to emulate one guy because the kids will kind of see right through that. So we've always tried to make it our own in that sense, and we feel like we've done a pretty good job in putting some roots down and what our program. It it happened pretty quickly. But, we wake up every day, it feels like our program now at St. Francis. And so we're excited about that, and we're excited to continue to move forward.
There's so much that you, touched on there. There's so much to unpack. Was Coach Smith maybe the guy that kind of got you hooked on coaching or got you into coaching? Was there somebody else? How did you sort of get into it?
Yeah, I got hired. Coach Nell actually called me first. I actually started coaching baseball at Anthony Wayne first, and then got on with Coach Smith and the football staff. So, Coach Nell was instrumental in just, when you talk about hard work and discipline and things of that nature. And we're a little bit more laxed than maybe, he ran the baseball program at Anthony Wayne, but some of those when it's time to work and those disciplines and those principles that he taught me when I played are very much within our program at St. Francis when it comes to the football team. So, Coach Smith is instrumental. I mean, he texts me once a week, twice a week, ask how things are going. I'd like to get him to come out and talk to our team at some point, which would be fun. But, those two guys, Anthony Wayne, were probably the biggest guys that I lean on. And then Bryce Graven, who's, he's another one that I would call a mentor. Ryan Donnelly, who I know you had on a couple months back on the show. He's another one, just won the state title in baseball. So all of those guys at Anthony Wayne that I would now call friends were mentors of mine that I played for all of them. So it's pretty cool to kind of see it all kind of come around. And they were the ones that drove me to get into what I'm doing now. I was very, I wanted to emulate those guys constantly. So it's fun to see where we've gotten to now at this point. And it's fun to see them kind of cheer us on and our successes and what we're doing.
Yeah, I can absolutely attest to the Mark Nell stuff. I don't think anybody coaches as hard as he did. I remember those 6 a.m. workouts just for tryouts, before in the winter, before you even get into actual spring baseball. So a few guys coach the way he did or do. Again, Dino Babers, you were a student assistant, at BG at that time. How cool was it to be a part of a BG team that was really this really interesting part in the football program's history? Yeah,
that 2015 team was a lot of fun to be around. Winning the MAC title, winning some of the games that we won that year on the road at Maryland, on the road at Purdue, and in the fashion that we won those games too, with the number of snaps, the spread football, the up tempo. Right. We were leading the country at one point in total offense. Matt Johnson was a Heisman candidate at one point. Yeah, it was insane. You guys were beating Maryland. Illinois would come into Bowling Green. We'd beat it was insane. We had best offense in the country. Up there with the Oklahoma and the Big 12 offenses. It was insane. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to be a part of. And I was a lonely student assistant. I did anything and everything they could ask of me to do at the time. But being able to be around those guys every day in the office, the Garrett Dieters of the world, the Roger Lewises, Ronnie Moore. Ryan Burbrink, and then Matt Johnson. All those guys, Travis Green. It was a star-studded cast at BG. I think it was kind of I don't want to say once in a generational kind of team, but it was. For a place like BG to have that much talent in that year, it was kind of unprecedented. It was a ton of fun to be around. So, Sean Lewis, who's now the head coach at San Diego State, got to work directly with him for a lot of what I did there. So just having the opportunity to be around those guys day in and day out, and just like I said, kind of get my master's in football was really cool. And that wasn't a paid position, was it? Yeah. Nope. So, and how many hours do you think you spent, inside not Stroh, but SIBO Center? Yeah. Well, any time that you were not in class as a student assistant, you were at the office. So it was a lot of hours, and you weren't paid. And really, the late hours were the times where some of those coaches would spend time with us and kind of teaching us the game and things like that. And you'd be able to get the chance to watch film. And then when Coach Jinks came in, Seth Dagey, who's now the offense coordinator at Arizona, I worked directly with him for that entire year. So that was a really neat experience. He just actually texted me the other day and said, great win week one. So it was, to be able to kind of build those relationships with those guys and, be around those guys day in and day out. But it was, you were trying to get your foot in the door and trying to get those guys to kind of notice you. So you wanted to spend every waking moment that you had at the office. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of tough work, but it was a lot of fun. And, I think young coaches nowadays want to skip that step. I think there's a lot of young coaches that want to call plays or be the head coach or be the defensive coordinator or have a title, whatever it may be. But those days for me were invaluable. I didn't make a dime. I worked my butt off. I was there for all hours of the day, and so getting.
Were you
that
doing laundry for players?
Oh, yeah. Yep, laundry. Yeah. I was in the equipment room at times, going and picking people up from the airport. I mean, anything and everything you could think of was kind of part of that role. So, because at the time you only had 2 GAs, and so like us student assistants were kind of like at a place like Ohio State, you could have multiple GAs. Where a place like BG only had 2 at the time. So we were kind of picking up the slack of the GAs a little bit as well. So, but you made that experience what you wanted of it, right? So, spending as much time as I did there opened a lot of doors for me.
Yeah. So you go from that to you're helping out at St. Francis, you're helping out at Central Catholic. That's kind of your first foray into play calling right then? Yeah.
So I got hired as the offensive coordinator with Dan Chipka at St. Francis in 2017, and I was 23 years old, and I didn't have an idea of what I was doing. No idea. It's kind of trial by fire at that point, and I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but there's a little bit of that going on. So I look back at that time now that I'm 32, and I'm like, man, I didn't have a clue. And I thought I had a clue, but I didn't have a clue. So, grateful for Dan for giving me that opportunity for sure, because it really opened my eyes. And then, when I had the opportunity to go, down the street here to go coach with Coach Dempsey, that was something I knew that I wanted to be a head coach at some point. So who better than to learn from, in this area. So for me, it was a no-brainer to and I kind of took a step back at that time. I just was the quarterbacks coach over there, helped develop the pass game a lot, and a lot of the RPO stuff. And Eric Page came in at the same time that I did, so him and I worked together. And he's still there right now, but kind of developing and enhancing the pass game. That's what Coach Dempsey wanted us to do. So it was invaluable. I mean, having that opportunity, kind of that trial by fire, and then knowing that I wanted to be a head coach, just not sure when it was going to happen and not sure where the right opportunity was going to be. But then getting the job at Otsego and being there for 2 years was great. And they were coming off a great year with Coach Jerwa and his son, who just got drafted.
Joseph Jerwa.
Yep. So, being able to take over that program, who was a really good program at the time, and kind of take my wounds, so to speak, as a young head coach was really invaluable. We were surrounded by a good staff there. I mean, the staff that they have now with Coach Rutherford, there's a number of holdovers that I had there too, and just a number of guys there that are now good buddies of mine that, working there for 2 years. So, I've been very blessed and very fortunate to be in the positions that I've gotten at this point. But a lot of hard work's gone into that too.
Yeah. Did you kind of feel, was it like a culture shock or something, like being the head coach, like having to be responsible for everything at Otsego?
Yeah.
Because I think you guys played at Otsego, right, when you were in high school, so it wasn't like a program you were super unfamiliar with.
Right.
But like having to go in, especially like you said, you got to follow up Jerwa and like literal best teams in program history and go take over that. What was that kind of like those couple of years?
I'm not sure how well liked I was when I first went to Otsego. So, taking over for a guy like Matt and everything, Matt's beloved out there. So, and I was a young 28-year-old that was coming from the city of Toledo. And really, I'd only worked in Toledo. I went to Anthony Wayne, but all of my coaching jobs had kind of been in the city of Toledo. So, it was definitely a culture shock. And then when you figure out that you are the guy that everybody's answering to, and every day starts with you, and you're setting the tone for the program. And I'll tell you what, those 2 years that I spent at Otsego, I certainly don't think we'd be in the position we are now at St. Francis with doing what we're doing, and maybe the confidence that I have as a head coach, if I didn't have those lumps there a little bit. And we had a good team. We had a good team my first year, and in 2022 we went 6-4 and just missed out on the playoffs. And our second year we were 4-6 and made the playoffs. We had a bunch of good kids that played for us. Jack Simpson is of note. Devin Farley. There was just a number of good kids that played for us that I was very fortunate to coach for 2 years out there. And like I said, to gain that experience as a head coach. And I'm very fortunate for the leadership out there to take a chance on me at 28 years old.
Yeah, it's a crazy kind of sliding doors moment, right? Because when Jerwa leaves the time that he does, allows you to go to Otsego, and then St. Francis job opens up again, which allows you to go, but then that allows Craig Rutherford to come from Eastwood to Otsego.
Yep.
So it's just the coaching carousel. Most people don't think it's that crazy at the high school level, but if you know who people are and you kind of see all the moves, it's crazy to think about, like what could have been if someone would have taken this job at this time. And yeah, it's just kind of this crazy butterfly effect.
Yeah, and I think it's worked out well for all parties. I mean, we talk about that a lot. I just saw Craig at a coaching clinic months back, and Otsego's in very good hands with Craig, and this job made sense for me. So I think everybody won in this scenario, and I think, it's part of it. Taking different jobs is part of the profession, and sometimes things work out in funny ways. If you would have asked me years ago if I would have ever ended up back at St. Francis, I'd have told you were crazy. But things work out in mysterious ways, and it's I tell people all the time, I'm like, I feel so at home here now, and I feel like this is a place where we can put our roots down and really build a really strong program for a number of years to come.
Yeah, and going back to Craig, I mean, he was an assistant at Anthony Wayne like the year before he took the Otsego job, and so you had a little experience, being on the sidelines as a coach for Anthony Wayne. Just anything else that you can kind of say to the culture of the Anthony Wayne program? Kind of, I know you were mentioning it earlier, learning under Craig, just what that was kind of like, being on the coaching side of things instead of being the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, getting the chance to coach there, I'll tell you what, there's nothing like Friday nights at Anthony Wayne. I mean, the atmosphere, the stadium, the job that Andy's done. Andy, when he took that job, my brother was actually a senior, my younger brother, Jordan. He was a senior that year, the year they went to the Final Four. So seeing what he's done with that job, and crazy to think that he's been there for 10 years now. But Anthony Wayne, he's turned that program into just a stable of success, and they're good year in and year out. And, I think it's something to, a little bit different in terms of the place that we're at with the dynamic of kids and things of that nature and the dynamic of the school. But I think when you look at jobs in the area, Anthony Wayne is certainly, when you coach there, it's one of the premier jobs in the area, and so that's what we're trying to make this place as well. And so kind of trying to emulate some of those things and do things the way that they do as well. And that's always going to hold a special place in my heart, being an alum from there. I always like to see how well they do, and it's certainly a unique place to coach and to live and just to be a part of that community. So the community is drastically different than what it was like when I moved out there 20-something years ago. But it's really exploded, and I think a lot of families are kind of pick between there and Perrysburg to kind of live when they're moving in from maybe different places, because the schools speak for themselves, the athletics speak for themselves. So it's certainly a great community, and I'm happy to be an alum from there.
Yeah, I mean, when you were going there, I mean, it was like 4 or 5 rounds for the playoffs. I mean, you guys were in a one division Northern Lakes League that had Maumee and I think maybe Rossford was still in there in your early years. Yeah, it was just a completely different conference. It was just a whole different sort of dynamic. You met your wife Allison there at Anthony Wayne. What can you say about her and her role? I think you've been very open about how supportive she's been of you and all the different coaching moves you've made, and even if it's high school, it's still kind of a tough thing to be like a coach's wife, and you're away for a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. She's been a huge support, and she's always kind of been there by my side, and so that's been awesome to have her be a part of. And it takes a special person to understand kind of what this job entails and how much work needs to be put in and done, to do it the right way. So for her to be supportive of that has been, really instrumental in my kind of growth in this career. And so it's been fun to have her along, and she like I said, she's just been a great support.
Yeah, and you guys just had a kid not too long ago, right?
Yeah, we had a daughter it'll be 3 weeks on Wednesday. We had a daughter. She was born August 6th. Her name's Shay Noel. Yeah. We just had a baby girl. So it's made for some long nights. The timing is impeccable, but ton of help with her mom and ton of help with my mom and people around us. So we're fighting through it, but it's been some, this fall's been, or I guess summer going into fall has been busy.
I know athletes kind of have like a baby boost, whenever they have a kid, they seem to go off on these great, do you feel like you'll have a coaching boost? Like you're going to have this, rip off this great tear as a coach?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, I mean, it's, it certainly gives you a different perspective. Once you have a child, I mean, it certainly gives you, you think a lot of things are the end of the world, but they're really not. So I think it's even in these 2 weeks, it's given me a different perspective about how we handle things with our kids in the football facility and how we kind of go about our business, with our staff and things of that nature, and what's really super important and what's really not that important. So yeah, I mean, I think, it's just certainly, obviously it's my first child, so it's a different aspect for me and trying to navigate that, but it's certainly a lot of fun.
Yeah, Dick Cromwell, I think you mentioned him earlier, legendary head coach for St. Francis, won a state championship. He's helping out you guys. He's on, in practices, stuff like that. What's it kind of like having him involved with the program?
Yeah, he was actually part of the hiring committee when I took this job and got hired and interviewed and all that. So, he had me up on the whiteboard and asking a bunch of questions, and it was a little intimidating to have the one of the most legendary coaches in Northwest Ohio, in the state of Ohio, kind of grilling you in an interview. But he's been a great mentor, so far, and he's around, but he's also not stepping on any toes. I mean, he's given his 2 cents here and there. Sometimes we want to hear it, sometimes we don't want to hear it. But I would be a fool not to have him around the program, and that's kind of my take from the whole thing. Is that there's so many alumni that played for him that adore him. And I think there was a little bit, of wanting him back around the program in some aspect. And so I thought, what better way than to bring it back now? And he's been huge and just kind of, letting me bounce some things off of him and being, we're in a group chat with our coaches, and he certainly makes us know how to laugh here and there with some of the funny things he says. So just having him a part of it in that aspect and breaking down some film for us and offering his 2 cents has been a lot of fun.
When he's grilling you, like questions on the whiteboard, is it stuff like, are you going to have your quarterback play under center, or are you going to have your guys like too high shell? Like, is he grilling you like old school football? Does he want to hear you say certain things about the style?
Yeah, I think he certainly offers his advice when it comes to that, and that's been fun. But I think he probably watches our offense now and thinks that we should be under center at times, and running some of the stuff that he ran back in the day. But he knows that football's changed and developed, and he knows that we want to run the ball at heart too as well. So he was certainly happy that we were able to produce a first-team All-Ohio running back last year, because that proved that we were running the football at a high clip as well. So we're just doing it a little bit different way than maybe he was doing it back in the day, but still producing the results that he also produced.
Absolutely. No one can argue with the results. Josh, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Chase. Appreciate it.
Great. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Chasing the Game. Be sure to check out all of our episodes on the WTOL 11 Plus app. We're on Roku, Fire, and Apple TV. You can also check out the full library of episodes on YouTube and on Spotify. We'll see you guys next time.